Hello, welcome to another episode of Deck Musings. So our continuing journey through historical standard, looking at various either tournament decks, as will be the case this week, or event decks where there's not a particular tournament deck I want to look at. So we're up to that point in the standard metagame, standard environment, where we're at the biggest that standard can be. So we've got all of 2 whole blocks, so all of Onslaught block, all of Mirrodin block, and a core set, in this case 8th edition. And in next week's episode we flip back to the thinnest that standard can be, because these Onslaught will drop out, and then we'll get the first set from the Champions of Kamigawa block. So not surprisingly, when it's like this, if we bookend for one moment, if we can, the fact that this was all during Affinity, and there was a lot of Affinity in tournament metas. But in terms of other decks that were around that maybe not always doing quite so well, there was a lot of non-affinity decks. You can see there's some Astral Slide decks which were leveraging cards from Onslaught, things like Cycling. There is the ubiquitous affinity stuff here. Skullclap has been banned. We've got a number of nationals during this period, and then more importantly for this episode we've got worlds, because that's what I want to talk about. And I've deliberately picked an artifact deck, but it's not an affinity deck. Slightly different approach. So I suppose you could say, you've got in the meta, you've got affinity decks, you've got artifact decks which aren't necessarily leveraging the affinity ability keyword, and then you got everything else. So here we are, 2004 World Championship, San Francisco. Now, I'm not going to... The winning deck, and we'll see in a moment, actually, interestingly, was not an affinity deck. It was an Astral Slide deck. So, as with World Championships, it's a mixture of formats. So they've got standard, booster, draft, Mirrodin block constructed as well. And then there's a final... I think the final is actually standard. So what have we got? Because World Championships was still a thing in 2004. They went away after that. So there were 4 decks actually printed up with gold bordered cards to commemorate the event. And interestingly enough, what they did was they printed all the cards in modern frames, regardless of, because 8th edition was when modern frames, I believe, came in. So what you've got is you've got one block, the Onslaught block, which would be in old frames, and then 8th edition Mirrodin is all in new frames. But what they did for this is everything went in a modern card frame. So Julien Nuijten, I think that is. Sorry if I've mangled that. He was a winner, 15-year-old, and he played a green-white Astral Slide deck designed to destroy affinity. In the standard event, if you like, he got a 4-2, and then on the final day he won, basically. Now the deck we're going to look at was the one that in the standard portion before they moved on to the final day. So that initial standard portion went 6-0. That's the deck we're going to have a look at. And we have the World Championship. We have the other finalist deck here, which was an affinity deck. And as they say, it played the deck that defined the metagame. And I'll have a look on the deck site. What's it called? Yeah, MTG Top 8. My mind went blank from my memory. We'll see just what the meta looked like in the finals, and also the beyond the top 8. So yeah, there's affinity, which we've covered before, and you can see a whole ton of stuff here. And this is the one I want to look at. So it is an affinity based combo deck, but it's not specifically affinity for artifact. Did I say? So it's an artifact based combo deck, but it's not specifically affinity. It went 6-0 on the standard day at Worlds, but then only made, what was it? Where did he get to? Semi-finalist. So here. And we'll go through this in a moment, and I'll sort of explain how it holds together. And then we have this deck, Gabriel and the Thief, which was a blue-white anti-infinity control deck. Made as far as the quarterfinals. So just 5 creatures. A lot of interesting cards in the meta at this point, actually. As you can see, a lot of control stuff. There's an Exalted Angel there. 4/5 for 6. So yeah, pretty interesting set of decks. I'm trying to remember what I'll do. I think this might be I've got a couple of these decks, I think I've done an unboxing. So I'll include a link to, if I find it, to the original unboxing for these World Champ decks. Okay, here's what the meta for the decks look. So we've got, this time around, it varies a bit on MTG Top 8 as to what they do, obviously depending on the way the tournament is structured. So sometimes you might come in here, it might just be a top 8. Sometimes it might be top 16, something like that. For this event, what they did is you've got the top 8 and then anything else that was undefeated on day 1. So if you remember, this made the top 8 here. This one in here, it's called KCI. As opposed to what's referred to as Myr Incubator Combo. So this also went 6-0 on day 1. But you can see, if you look, you've got a couple of, 3 Astral Slide decks, 2 in the top 8. We do have a Goblins, then we got Affinity there. This is a blue-white Cloud Post deck, because it did have Cloud Post in it. And then you can see we've got Big Red deck, which we've looked at in a previous episode, sort of deck that was. Also Tooth and Nail deck and another Affinity deck. Yeah. Okay, so let us have a look. It's an interesting deck. And of course what I try and do is pick these so I don't end up repeating myself. Hang on, this is the only trouble. Okay. That's annoying. Okay, let's try again. Oh, I see why. Phew. That's better. Oh, come on. Right. So 23 artifacts. But as I pointed out, we don't see any affinity for artifacts there. We don't see any here. More artifacts. So clearly a lot of artifacts. Oh, there's one. So there's more in the sideboard. So there is a bit of an affinity for artifacts going on in the sideboard. It's interesting as well, isn't it? There's no basic land in the deck. It's all artifact lands, and it's 5 colour as well. Even though it doesn't need to be. Yeah, so very interesting how this is put together. So you can see here we've got there's thing going on here, as I think it said. If we go down, where was it? Yeah, the deck uses Krark-Clan Ironworks to quickly get a Myr Incubator into play, which then creates 30 or more 1/1 creatures. So let's just see why that might be the case, looking at these two, and then we'll go through the whole deck. So it's a 4 for 4, and you can sacrifice an artifact, add 2 to your mana pool. Myr Incubator is 6 to cast, and then 6, tap it, sacrifice it, search your library for any number of artifact cards, remove them from the game, then put that many 1/1 Myr artifact creature tokens into play, then shuffle your library. So you can see there is just so much artifact stuff in here that you could just search out. Everything else is either sorceries or instants. Now, of course, you're purely using them to create tokens because you have to remove them from the game. So, you can't do any massive amount of mana shenanigans there. These are all going to get, if you pull these out, they're all going to get exiled. So obviously what you want to happen is get to a position where you're casting this fairly early on in the game. There's also as well, and I'm assuming this must be, well, it further helps the combo. This is I think its own thing, but we'll have a look in a moment. It's a long time since I've looked at the Goblin Charbelcher deck, which is a slightly different construction, but I think this is in here as a possible backup plan. If I've got that wrong, someone can correct me. So we've got 4 Chrome Moxes, 0 to cast, has imprint. When it comes into play, you may remove a non-artifact, non-land card in your hand from the game, and you can imprint on that, and then add 1 mana of any of the imprinted card's colours to your mana pool. Then we've got Goblin Charbelcher, 4 to cast, 3, tap, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. Goblin Charbelcher deals damage equal to the number of non-land cards revealed this way to target creature or player. If the revealed land card was a mountain, Goblin Charbelcher deals double that damage instead. So you don't get to benefit from the double damage because none of them have mountain in here. This one doesn't, and there's no other mountains in the deck. Put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in any order. So it's just going to do damage equal to the number of cards revealed. So then we have this Krark-Clan Ironworks, which you've already looked at, the Myr Incubator, Pentad Prism, 2 to cast, Sunburst, remove a charge counter from Pentad Prism, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. Sunburst, this comes into play with a charge counter on it for each colour of mana used to pay its cost. And then we've got Talisman of Dominance, 3 of those, and Talisman of Progress. So tap for colourless mana, but you could generate, in the case of Talisman of Dominant, blue or black, and in the case of the Progress one, white or blue, and they'll do 1 damage to you. So obviously it helps with, in terms of the blue sources for these other cards as well. So in terms of the instance, we've got 4 Condescends, X and a blue, counter target spell unless its controller plays X, scry for 2. And then Thirst for Knowledge, 2 and a blue, it's 3 of those. Draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards from your hand unless you discard an artifact card from your hand, where you've got a lot of artifacts in the deck. 19 lands, as I said, so it's the full set of the coloured artifact lands and the 6th of that cycle, which is the Darksteel Citadel, which is indestructible in here. So, 2, 4, 4, 3, 2 and 4 of these. And then sorcery wise, interesting set of sorceries. So we've got 3 Fabricates. Search your library for an artifact card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. We do have a Fireball, which is X and a red. We do have red mana. We've got 4 of that here. And with Fireball anyway, I mean, to really do a lot of damage, you would want it to appear fairly late game, so you've got a lot of mana to invest in it, and by then hopefully you'd have a great furnace out for the single red. Deals X damage divided evenly, rounded down among any number of target creatures and or players. As an additional cost to play Fireball, pay 1 for each target beyond the first. We had a look at this last week because it was reprinted in Darksteel. Serum Visions, 3 of those, draw a card for 1, a single blue, it's got Scry 2 on it. And then we do have this Thoughtcast, which does have affinity for artifacts on it. So 4 and a blue, it's card draw, but with all the artifacts we've got in play, or could potentially have in play, we could end up just playing a single blue for this, with the right board state. And sideboard wise, pretty straightforward. There's only 4 sort of choices of cards here. So 4 of the Furnace Dragons, 6 and 3 red, 5/5, does have affinity for artifacts, has flying, and when it comes into play, if you played it from your hand, remove all artifacts from the game. So yeah, obviously for specific matchups, and in some instances here, I'm just wondering, would it work against your combat? Yeah, so yeah, again, certain scenarios this is obviously be useful, but it would be counter to the combo in certain circumstances and based on the board state and various other things. 4 mana leaks, 4 on the brain, 4 mana leaks, 1 and a blue, counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. 3 Pyroclasms, 1 and a red, it deals 2 damage to each creature, and then 2 and a red, Seething Song, you get 5 red out of it, added to your mana pool. Now notice here what I'm doing here is I'm showing the cards as they probably would have been at that time. As I mentioned, if you have the World Championship deck version of these, they have gold borders. Now this one doesn't have any cards before 8th edition in it, so it doesn't have any of the old border cards in it. Interesting curve, but yeah, it is a 5 colour deck, but you only have to really worry about blue and red from that perspective. But by doing this using the artifact lands, it means that all of your lands are artifacts, which, you know, works so well with this and basically everything else. Yeah, really interesting deck. Okay, so let's look through. So this is back. So Chrome Mox was in the deck. This is banned in Modern. Wonder why. Yeah, these imprint cards, like on the right cards, yeah, imprint's definitely worth looking at. So we'll take a look at it because, yeah, there's certain cards which just, you know, it's super nice, really cool cards with that imprint on them. You can see here, I think, we'll have a look, see how, what's the most recent one? 30th Anniversary Countdown Kit. Yeah, not reprinted many times. I'm trying to think if I even have a copy of this. I'm trying to remember. I should know, shouldn't I? Because I recently opened up these, or went back through them. Yeah. Yeah, nice card. Okay, let's see what we've got. So yeah, it's a Moxen. Synergy colour share. So we'll look at those two first. Then we'll look at how widespread imprint was. I mean, another thing, if you're curious, don't forget, for all of these, I have set musings for. So check out my set musings if you really want to go down the keywords, ability word cycles rabbit hole for any of these. That's true of any of the deck musings episodes I've done. There is a corresponding set musings for the period, whenever in that period of standard when a particular set came out. The only ones I think I chose not to do would have been whatever the first proper block was. So that would be Mirage, wouldn't it? I need to go back at some point and finish that and do probably a set musings on that, and earlier sets as well, I think. So 13 Moxen. Let's have a look at them in their original glory. We've actually looked at Moxen before, but doesn't hurt to look at again, seeing as there's such a big thing in Magic. Okay, so there's all the originals: Emerald, Jet, Pearl, Ruby, Sapphire, Diamond, which came out in Stronghold. Then we've got one from one of the unsets, Unglued. There's our Chrome Mox. Another unset, and this was a promo. Wasn't this a play on that? Didn't Woodsy try and do like some sort of online social network thing? Was it called Gleemax? Yeah, not sure. I think it was well before I got into Magic. That was kicking around. Mox Opal. I think I have one of these. We got Mox Amber and Mox Tantalite. And you'll be no surprise. Again, we're here, so let's go down that rabbit hole. So yeah. Okay, these are not cheap. These are original ones. I'll probably shock myself in a moment. I have no clue how much the opal is. So these are $500. Wow, for the one in Stronghold. Chrome Mox 89. Even the World... Okay, so they're from the World Championship decks there. Around $17. Did it get reprinted in Double Masters? Mox Lotus. Oh, $73. If I did include... If I did indeed pull one of these, I just can't remember. I think I might have done. Well, at some point, are we going to Yeah, I must. Yeah, no, I've already done a Scars artwork video, haven't I? So, yeah, done so many videos, I just don't remember. Mox Amber, Dominaria, Mox Tantalite. Oh, another big thanks to everybody, and this happens fairly regularly, but I should acknowledge it more. Thanks to everybody, like real old school friends of the channel from 10, plus years ago, that keep checking in and saying hi. I do try and say hi back in the comment section and compliment them on their what's the word I'm looking for? Just their stoicism, or their ability to like stick with the channel or reappear. So yeah, thanks to everybody that continually views or pops in to say hi and says, "Oh, I haven't checked in for a while," and that does really bring a smile to my face when people do that. So thanks very much for that. Oh, hang on, we don't want to move on yet, do we? Okay, because we want to have a look at some of this other stuff. Synergy colour share. What's this? Is this something I've ever looked at before? I don't think I have. Yeah, this could be a long video. I'm feeling rather laid back this morning. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Synergy colour share. So yeah, so synergies if it shares a colour. Oh well, there's some. How much is this? That's always intrigued me. Conda's banner. Convoke Radiance. It's always interesting to see as well how some of these tags get just what's the word? There's a correlation between the tag and a particular keyword ability because of the nature of the keyword ability. So here, things like Convoke. So there's going to be a lot of Convoke cards as a consequence. Conspire, Convoke, Conspire. Oh, look at all this stuff from Shadowmoor. Yeah, and Command Tower falls into that, and things like Illuminated Folio. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to look at, if you remember, which is imprint cards, because I'm curious now as to how widespread that was. So 27 imprint cards. Yeah, I remember Isochron Scepter. Oh, and Duplicant. So that's right. It's first printing 27. So let's see. We're in ascending order by the release date. And what do we got here? So far, there's Mimic Vat. So, yeah, no surprise here. So I wasn't keeping up. We've got Mirrodin. We've got Darksteel. Into Fifth Dawn. Because, yeah, this Fifth Dawn has been released around this time. Excuse me. And then we've got Scars and Mirrodin. There's Mimic Vat, Knowledge Pool. But then for the Phyrexian ones, we're starting to see it on like non-artifacts here. It's on a vehicle here. That's funny. Jurassic World. Yeah, mimic that. That's how much are they? That's again, when I do this, it's like, oh yeah, that'd be a cool little collection of cards, like imprint cards. You know, again, I quite like the idea of building a little themed artwork collection based around some commonality. It's a nice thing, yeah, you have a little binder of it and it open up, brings a smile to your face. And I suppose it, yeah, it's, of course you're going to, with a lot of these, it'll be around certain sets. But so I was curious if when that light bulb goes in my head, would that be a nice, reasonable set? Maybe I should do I don't know whether to do an episode at some point in the future, like a one-off, where I look at, nice little collections to have that are, not overly expensive, that have nice sort of themed sets of artwork, either the artwork itself or just the cards it's printed on. Because you probably know already, I'm keen to do that with cycles, but it'd be interesting to try it with other things. I mean, the problem with imprint is certain of these cards are obviously pretty powerful, as you just saw there, and so consequently, because they haven't necessarily been reprinted a lot, or been reprinted in sets that are widely available, then the price sort of goes up. Okay, so really it's mainly the two from the scars. I'm sorry, the original Mirrodin block. That would be this one. Although there is a slightly cheaper version. Yeah, would be the most expensive to acquire. So the Chrome Mox and the extra planar lens. Yeah, it's these ones that really leverage or improve or synergize in a way to produce mana. Or this thing. Like you're copying instants. Okay, let's move on. There's Goblin Charbelcher. So it was reprinted for these retro artifacts. Was in the Mystery Booster. Was in Eternal Masters. So, yeah, I'm assuming if that was the case for Eternal Masters, there must have been like I wonder if you could draft a Charbelcher deck. And it was in one of the dual decks as well. It's not pricey. Burn any, and synergy with Mountain. Mountain synergies. Why not? I'm assuming. What's that land? Is it from Zendikar and Radiohead? What happened there? Spoiler alert. Okay. Yeah, I'll find it probably before the name of the card comes back to me. Okay, it's Goblin Charbelcher. Yeah, so we've got Affinity for Mountains. This is an interesting card. Looks cool. Oh yeah, the mages, hedge mages. And you got the Nicatl. That's it, Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle. That's the one I always sort of tend to remember when I think of Synergy for Mountains. I mean, obviously there's other ones here, but that just does make me think of that. We got Koth, haven't we? Remember these staves. Sort of like Lucky Charm cards, I think. Does it? No, there isn't a category for that. Excellent. Just go back a step. No, there's not going to be a cycle or anything like that. So, Krark-Clan Ironworks, banned in Modern. Again, I wonder why. Okay, adds multiple mana. Mana Rock, Synergy Artifact, free sack outlet. Yeah, so it doesn't cost you anything to do the sacrifice. Sacrifice outlet artifact. So this adds multiple mana. Yeah, those things can get out of control if they're repeatable. Let's see. Oh. Yeah, been down this rabbit hole before. I wonder how I screen out. What I'm looking for is abilities where it doesn't tap, so it doesn't get sort of turned off. Yeah. Two. I don't think they've probably done that again. I mean, there's it's a conditional version. Yeah, see, that's one and tap. And the phone chalice does have multi-kicker on it, but you have to scale it at the point you cast it, not later on. Okay, this one you're tapping down other creatures. Interesting. That was in one of those, what are they called, event decks, I think. I think that was in the, there was a sort of blue deck, I think, that came out around this time. I'm not sure if it was either one of the intro decks or whether it was an event deck. Yeah, again, this is scaling off the original casting. Yeah, so not many where you can just throw stuff at it, like, you know, either sack stuff or tap other stuff over and over again, because so many of these you've got to actually tap the card itself to get access to that, so it sort of locks it off. Yep, so obviously not something they like to do a lot. Okay. Oh, Myr Incubator. Wow, this one is legal in everything that... oh, sorry, it's not... What should I say? A better way to word it. So it's not been banned in anything it's legal in. That makes sense. Extract synergy artifact again, no surprise in this set. Exile cards from a library, they're just gone now. If we looked at this, yeah, we've looked at this before. Yeah. There we go. So I suppose what I would be interested in is things that say put that many. We've got 50 cards where that's the case. So I'll look at that first before I start screening out a bit more. So yeah, a lot of it looks like it's counters. I suppose I'm more interested in tokens really, aren't I? But it could be any type of token, so better not just add it to the end now, better put it in its own separate clause. Okay. Let me go back a stage here. It's probably been errated. That many. Create. Really? Maybe there we go. That's better. So stuff that creates multiple tokens off of, or scales off of something. Let's have a look at the... Oh, forgot to put it in the clipboard. Is first printing. Print of. Printing. Let's do that now. We have Tetravus, Saber Ants, Brood Hatch, and then Tuco, Day of the Dragons. Oh, Lightning Coil. Cool. What did that do then? Whenever a non-token creature you control is put into a graveyard from play, put a charge counter on lightning coils. At the beginning of your upkeep, if lightning coils has 5 or more charge counters on it, remove all of them from it and put that many 3/1 red elemental creature tokens with haste into play. Remove them from the game at end of turn. Oh yeah, I remember this. 0/1 Eldrazi spawn creature tokens. And then we got Hornet's Nest as well. Pentad Prism. Was reprinted for Plane Chase and ended up in Double Masters as well. Yeah, Mana Rock. Also stores mana because... So with this one, obviously, the more colours of mana sources you have that can generate colours, the more charge counters you get. But of course, once you run out of charge counters, you can't use it to add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. But it doesn't blow up, it just sits there. So again, it's an interesting inclusion in this deck because the deck cares about, or you can leverage artifacts, and if this is just sitting there in play and you know exhausted your charge counters, then yeah, for this particular deck, so it counts as an artifact for whatever you want to do with it, whether it is for the affinity bits in the sideboard and that 1 blue affinity card, or the actual combo piece itself, which relies on artifacts. So yeah, if you look back, yeah, this ability to sack an artifact. Oops, jumped ahead a bit there. And of course, it's got me curious about Sunburst, whether that came back as a thing. I mean, obviously sometimes these things come back in slightly different forms. I had both modular and Sunburst. So 1/1 counts on it for each colour of mana used to pay for its cost, and when it's put into graveyard you may put its 1/1 counters on target artifact creature. Okay. So that was a thing from 5th Dawn. And again, have a look at the 5th Dawn set Musings episode if you're interested in seeing me go through that in a bit more detail. Oh, Phyrexian will be 1. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff in this form didn't just get straight used again in, Return to Mirrodin in Scars of Mirrodin. I don't know if it was, I just can't remember off the top of my head if it was a repackage rather like Affinity became Metalcraft. Not sure. Okay, well these we've looked at a few times now. So yeah, there's lots of variations on this sort of card. So there was a cycle of these. It's a Mana Rock. You got also Pristine Talisman, which is the one that taps for colourless and you gain 1 life as opposed to this doing you 1 damage. But various of these cards throughout Magic's history, these types of artifacts you get where they sort of play around with the casting cost, whether or not it generates colourless mana, and if you generate the coloured mana, what that does, if anything. So yeah, lots of Mana Rocks that have, an identity. Let's see if we can do this. So if I do type artifact, so we'll just deal with artifacts, then what we'll do is have the colour identity as 2. There we go. But I thought they'd bubble up a bit better with that. So here we go. So yeah, you got the cameos, and it's not necessarily going to show everything here, I don't think. Border posts, key runes, clue stones. Monuments. There's the signets. Oh, I know why, because I forgot to add in this. That's better. Yeah. So, first printing. So, cameos. Talismans of Dominance. Yeah, then we got the signets from the copies from the original Ravnica block, where they were sort of spread out, depending on what, because they did that thing where they, over the course of the block as a whole, the whole of the Ravnica block, you know, they only did certain colour combinations. And so this gives it a sort of way. So you've got red, white, blue, black, black, green, green, white in Ravnica City of Guilds. You've got red, green, blue, red, and going to come up. Oh yeah, white, black in Guild Pack, and then you've got the white, blue, and the black, red one, and then this green, blue one in the final set, Dissension. So what's that? 433, yeah, 433. So that's how they handled that there. It's like keep them separate. Later on, when they revisited Ravnica, I was trying to remember, but I think it got a bit more complicated, maybe. Particularly, wasn't it later on when they tried to squeeze everything into the final set? Something like that. Yeah. So there's the monuments, the lockets. Talismans, and another set here. But again, it's interesting to see how they combine up, or balance, I suppose might be a better word, choice of word, how they balance, you know, the cost of the mana versus what it does in terms of what sort of mana you're getting generated, but also what's the downside, or do you get any extra utility? Obviously, let's have a look, I imagine. Yeah, so there's the 3 colour ones. So the obelisks, and then the banners, crystals. In terms of what would be included, I wonder in... Oh, surprise, surprise, yep. Obviously the Moxes, and then the mana batteries and the diamond, yeah, okay. Oh, those, yeah, the Ramos stuff. Because you remember the totems. As well. I don't know if there's ever been any. There's not been any 4 colour ones, have there? No. And then 5 colour. Or 5 colour, yeah, identity. But a better way to find some of these is going to be that, isn't it? Yeah. any colour ones. 76 of those. Yeah. So that's a big thing. These sort of ones, and again, playing around with the casting cost and the, you can see Pentad Prism here, and then what it does and any additional abilities. Yeah, so Condescend, Fifth Dawn. It is a counterspell with set mechanic, which we've spoken about before. The way certain key things, certain things we associate with certain colours, then get stapled together with a mechanic for certain sets. It's a soft counterspell because of this condition here about, a controller can pay X and stop the countering from happening. It's also got top deck manipulation because of the scry on it. It says it's better than Clash of Wheels. So X and a blue, counter target spell unless its controller pays X. This is X and a blue, but because of the scry. And top deck manipulation can take multiple forms, both just descriptively and, in terms of actual keywords. But scry was always an interesting thing when that first appeared. I mean, that, if you look back, I think today's probably going to be more looking at certain keywords. It's been, it was used a lot, or has been used a lot. Also, here you can see it's actually been added. It's been errated. So with some of these, it wouldn't be until these are in the database have been altered to be scry. Doesn't mean obviously all top deck manipulation is scrying, but certain ones would retrospectively fall into that thing, into the scry bucket, so to speak, and be aptly described by scry and then the number. So big thing here for Fifth Dawn. And then we saw it again in Future Sight. But that was the block where there was a lot of keywords abilities. I often wondered, I think, out loud in other set musings and other musings I've done where I go through cards on Scryfall Light. I can't imagine what it must have been like for a new player in that period during the whole sort of Future Sight block that was part of, because there was just so much as you move through the block. There was just so much stuff going on. There was all the shifted cards as well. It must have been quite disorientating, or overwhelming, I suppose might be a better word. Crystal Ball's interesting. It's basically just a scry card. It's repeatable. Things like Read the Bones, Stick in My Head, and the Hoplite. And we had these temples as well with it on. Even though they entered the battlefield tapped, I remember that they were printed at rare. And these ones. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, Sigilled Starfish. Sigilled Skink. So how is the word sigiled used? Is there any significance? Probably not really. Nope. That's a sigil on it. Whoops. Dear me. Thirst for knowledge, which I know we looked at recently, I think. Yeah, so this is an interesting one. So 2 and a blue, you get to draw 3 cards, and then the other bit, you know, this sometimes happens when you have to then discard some cards with blue cards. It's conditional, so that if you have an artifact card, you can just discard the artifact card. So if you don't, then you've got to discard 2 cards from your hand. If you do have an artifact card, then you can discard that, and that will be the only card. Yeah, there's compulsive research, which is this draw 3, then discard 2 thing going on. And yeah, this has come up multiple times. Yeah, the flip side of that is, or the red thing is rummaging, where you're discarding before you draw. Similar to Artificer's Epiphany, yeah. Similar to Practical Research, which is in blue-red, funnily enough. Tezzeret's Ambition. It's another mono blue card. But because of the discard, then it also falls into discard outlet as well. And this discarded type matters for some effects. There's 44 of those. Fabricate. So artifact tutoring. Yeah, it's come up a few times. Was reprinted in Magic 2010 actually. I imagine it's a sort of card you would want to keep the lid on a little bit. I mean, there's been 56 tutor artifacts. I mean, any form of tutoring can be, yes, I suppose, be treated with respect in terms of, you know, the cost of it and various other things. So various ways they might control that, like, you know, limiting the cost of the card that you can do it on, or the type of the card, or various other scenarios. But we're probably aware of certain periods in Magic history where the ability to tutor for certain things may have got a little bit out of control, and then subsequently stuff may have had to have been banned. So that's why I also like doing these episodes on decks, because it does remind you of certain times in Magic's history where the meta's been somewhat problematic in terms of cards getting out of control. Even if the deck we're talking about didn't feature it necessarily, then when we do the down the rabbit hole business, see where we end up, and stuff bubbles to the surface. So more card draw. There's some pretty cool cards in Fifth Dawn. If you haven't taken a look at the set for a while or not at all, definitely check it out. Some interesting stuff. So worse than preordained though. So that was scry 2, then draw a card. This is draw a card, then scry 2. So yeah, obviously it's nice here where you're able to, with preordained, where you're able to manipulate the top of the deck a little bit before you do the card draw. And yeah, I mean, as we saw, top deck manipulation, something we've seen before. Without a body. So Serum Sovereign is 4 and a blue, 4/4 with the same sort of ability stapled to it. Thoughtcast, where we looked at this previous week. And yeah, affinity for artifacts. So in the main deck itself for this one, it is one of the few affinity for artifacts. They're the only one. The rest are all in the sideboard. And worse than Ancestral Recall. So single blue, target player draws 3 cards. You get to draw 2 cards here for 4 and a blue, which seems pretty awful. But of course, if you've got enough artifacts in play, which clearly this deck, with all the artifact lands and everything else, and the vast majority of the deck being an artifact, except for instants and sorceries, then yeah, this could come down quite a bit. And Thought Monitor, is it with a creature? So 6 and a blue, 2/2 with affinity for artifacts with flying. Yeah. And as we've seen, affinity for artifacts in that particular form. If you've not watched any of my previous episodes around this era in Magic, and this is the first one you've stepped into, you can see, well, it did return for Modern Horizons, and how they, I suppose, dealt with it. So if you just look at the affinity keyword, if it appears on the fin, if I spelled that right, we'll soon find out. Fin. Whoops. Fin. Yeah, I'm getting my T's and F's muddled up. So 39 cards specifically have that in Magic's history. You can see large percentage of them are obviously in the block, but we've got one from War of the Spark, and then these ones where they felt that it was possibly safe to include it in Modern Horizons. Then we get it sort of comes back in the Phyrexian one, a few others, because of course anybody that's familiar with Magic and going back to Mirrodin will probably be aware of this. So let's just make a mental note. So affinity artifacts is this spell costs 1 less to play for each artifact you control. So how is that different from Metalcraft? Let's have a look. So as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. So that had a sort of threshold in terms of just the point at which it switched on. And I don't know here. Yeah. You can see, unlike affinity, it doesn't look like there's any cards through playing around with the wording on Metalcraft, because it's more of a threshold type thing. Not necessarily the ability, but I suppose it's a similar concept. But yeah, it's not. I don't see any here that are also additionally like scaling off of that and saying, well, yeah, any additional artifact beyond those 3, it increases. It is just really that. So yeah, so they got it under control there. Okay, yeah, these were a cycle. We've looked at these. We have the full 5 plus the 6th artifact in here, and then we'll move on to there's nothing else I want to really add to this. It's pretty straightforward. I've talked about these probably 3 times, I suspect now. Yeah, part of a cycle. And generally, as I've seen in other episodes, the teaming up of a land with some other type, in this case artifacts, takes on lots of different forms. So excuse my throat. Yeah, I've got this winter throat that I know a lot of people have got, and it just won't go away. Well, it comes and goes. Yeah, so there we are. And then you get all these flip cards where it's artifact on one side and then a land on the other. And they did redo it for Modern Horizons. But most of the others, apart from the odd one here that aren't part of those 2 cycles that we have, are there by virtue of that. And teaming up lands with other things is interesting because some things, obviously, because a land's a permanent, when you team it up with a non-permanent, it's going to have to be on a card that flips in some way. Let's just see how that turns out. Yep, so same is true of sorceries. What else can we do? We did the artifacts. Yeah, enchantments. That's interesting. So Ars of Saga is an enchantment land. Everything else is all flipped. In terms of creature, it gets really interesting, doesn't it? Because you've got Dryad Arbor, which is a land creature, and you have all these other things which are a creature on one side and then they're a land on the flip side. But there's this other area, so see how easy this finds what I'm talking about. But yeah, lands that turn into creatures by virtue of something on here. like Stalking Stones and then various other things. Yeah, these ones. Okay. Mana leak. So another soft counter. So we're in the sideboard now. And similar to Miscast, reduce rubble, the reduce bit. Spell Pierce. Yeah, I remember when this appeared. So this is 2 and a blue. Spell Pierce is a single blue, but it the turning off bit is 2 to pay. This one is 3, so slightly higher bar. And we got Convolute, which is 4 to turn it off. And then we got things like Quench. It's better than Quench. 1 of the blue, counter target spell unless its controller plays 2, so less for the controller to pay the spell you're countering. Interesting mana leak series. Oh, okay. I don't think have we been down this rabbit hole before? Probably not. Soon find out. Normally the present is, yeah, if that's in the queue. So let's have a look. Okay. So you've got Mana Leak, which is 1 and a blue for 3. Convolute, it's 2 and a blue with 4 as the unless clause. Spell Pierce, single blue. And 2 switches it off, and then Mind Static, 3 and a blue. And 6 causes it to fizzle, however you want to think about that. So if I did that in casting cost order instead, mana value, Spell Pierce, Mana Leak, Convolute, Mind Static. Okay, I'd completely forgotten about that card. Dragon's Maze. Oh, Furnace Dragon. Yeah, this has come up before. So 5/5 for 6 and 3 red. For a total of 9 mana for 5/5. So you wouldn't be particularly happy, even that has flying, but it does have affinity artifacts, so you can get the cost down. And this interesting ability which blows up all the other artifacts in the game. If you played it from your hand. So obviously good in a sideboard if you've got some sort of artifact matchup. Although again, like I said, because we're playing lots of artifacts, yeah, could be a bit careful. Symmetrical Chrome Scale Drake. Oh yeah, so that's the mirrored pair. Seething Song, banned in Modern. So 2 and a red, so you put in 3 mana and you get out 5, so you've gained 2 mana in total out of that, out of what you've, or yeah, got an extra 2 mana. So nice mana bit of ramp there. See what they call it. Ritual. That's it. A ritual spell. So spells that add mana. Yeah, and we have looked at rituals before. Because Dark Ritual and yeah, Sacrifice. Oh, Reign of Filth. You got Cabal Ritual. There's Seething Song. And things like Mana Geyser, Channel of the Suns, Desperate Ritual, which had Splice into Arcane. Pyretic Ritual, Geosurge. Yeah, obviously, heavy into red in this one. There's also this, which is always interesting, this mana morphose. So one and either red or green, and then it adds 2 mana of any combination of colours to your mana pool. So there's interesting fixing going on there. And you get to draw a card. And then finally, Pyroclasm. So 1 and a red, Pyroclasm deals 2 damage to each creature. I'm sure this type of card we have looked at quite a lot before. So Cinderclasm, similar to Whip Flare, similar to that. Sorcery Speed, but it's 2 damage to each creature. So a sort of, I don't know how you think about it, like this dialed back wrath effect. I mean, it's sweeper creature burn is how they tag it up in Scryfall. And yeah, it can turn up on a lot of different cards in a lot of different forms. And yeah, if we're just thinking specifically about sorceries, then this sort of gives you an idea of similar cards that do a similar thing. If you are specifically interested in a particular point on the curve, which always I really like looking at stuff like that and saying, okay, well, what else is in this slot that does a similar thing? So what it was, the CMC was 2, I believe, for that. Whoops. So here's Pyroclasm originally. So way back, so it's a reprint from Ice Age, which makes sense. It's an 8th edition. Up at that point, core sets were always 100% reprints, so it's got to be reprinted from something. But yeah, interesting, and gets a bit complicated because this type of search also shows the X spells. But if we just take those out, so I'm going to minus Oracle X. I'm sure there's a cleaner way than that to do it, but just quick and dirty. Just seeing what it comes up as. So we've got what, not surprisingly, mainly in red. Sorcery Speeds. I will have a look at the instance in a moment. We've got a modal version here, which is always interesting. Although quite a few of these are doing like 1 damage to each. And remember, we've still got this in here, it being a sweeper spell. So yeah, 1, 2 damage. What's this? Sega Dreamcast cards. Okay, I didn't know that was a thing. Does anybody know much about these? I mean, I know they did them they did cards that you could redeem when they released the original, that original product on the PS3 and PC, Jewels of the Planeswalker. And they had cards you could redeem for codes, but yeah. What's the story behind this one? Anybody know? Rare Japanese non-foil. I mean, beyond what they did with Jewels of the Planeswalker, have they ever done any other game system stuff outside of that for other platforms? Yeah, let me know in the comment section if it's something you're familiar with. So with this, if we take this out. No, actually, let's just do instants for the moment. I'm more interested in things that non-permanence. So okay, so on a charm and Cinderclasm. So we do have it at instant speed. If I was to do this, say, I think that's going to be interesting, possibly, because what I'm going to do, oh, I forgot that. Yeah, okay, so that's got instants and sorceries in it. By release date, we got the first printing, good. So what I want to do is just make this a bit easier on myself. I need to move this, because otherwise I've got to move things around. Let me just cut that out there and pop that in there. Okay, there we go. So now I can just flick through this. Okay. So let's have a look at the curve. So what have we got? Oh, that's interesting. So the one drop stuff. Oh, I'm glad I did this. This is cool. So the one drop stuff. Yeah, it's conditional. Okay, and there's some overload shenanigans. Okay, let's see. This is probably going to get really interesting as we go up the curve. Notice I've deliberately screened out the X spells. So those we're already aware of. We get up to 3 and we're seeing 33 cards here. And again, some of these, like some of the green ones, you know, if anybody knows with these sort of mass removal spells in green, generally it's targeting, you know, often flying creatures. You also sometimes see with some of these, like the flip side, like non-flyers. There. Rolling Trembler. Seismic Rupture. So yeah, any one of these like seismic stuff, you tend to find that yeah, where it's blowing up it's alluded to in the artwork or the card, the way it's named, that it's something to do with just causing some rupture or tremor or earthquake in the land, and then therefore it's going to only affect creatures without flying or in the foundations. What's that from? It's Nuijten. I don't know, that's got quite like old school artwork, hasn't it? To it. Okay. What else have we got? Ooh. It's interesting stuff here. The other cool thing is when you go through the curve with this sort of stuff, and you're used to seeing stuff, say 2-drop, sweeper burn stuff or whatever, and there's a certain sweet spot. Sometimes you get to a part of the curve where you're not just familiar with that, the cards, that occupy that place, and it like sort of brings back stuff or makes you aware of things. I remember Fiery Confluence. So I'm probably more likely to remember like the modal ones, I think, that are higher casting cost. That's a funny one. Deals 2 damage to each creature for each creature enchantment on that creature. It's a pretty specific sideboard card. Oh, I've gone down, haven't I? Where did I get to? 5. Oh, Famine. Did that ever get reprinted outside of... Oh yeah, it was included in Vintage Masters and Commander 2013. Wow, this was online, obviously, this Masters edition. So that's another interesting thing, isn't it? That cards that were originally printed in Portal that hadn't been printed anywhere else, and then getting reprinted somewhere. In that place, the first time would have been in the Commander deck. Interesting card though, in sort of black. You've got each creature and player 3 damage. And these ones that fold back, so, you know, they're doing damage equal to a creature's power as well. Yeah, it's fascinating to see how that sort of idea of doing damage might be controlled by some other factor or scale up with some other factor. Oh, I'm glad I went down this rabbit hole. This is really fascinating. Hopefully as much for anybody watching this is for me. Oh, there's Wildfire. See, that was what from Portal Second Age did get reprinted in as a saga and was in Corset a couple of times. Destroyed 4 lands. Sorry. Well, I was going to say, wow, that's impressive, but no, you destroy 4 of your lands, and your opponent destroys 4 of his or her lands. Okay, then Wild 4 deals 4 damage to each creature. I don't remember that ever coming up in No Hand, No Land stuff, but I imagine that would be too. Yeah, the fact you're blowing up your own stuff is not really something we looked at too much in No Hand, No Land. Slice and dice. So I suppose the best thing to do now, as we're getting up to the higher stuff, is doing CMC greater than 6. There we go. And we'll put that on a curve. Where's it gone? Okay. Destructive force. Hang on. That's better. Okay. Flame wave. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these are all 7s, aren't they? That's an 8. Alpha Brawl. These are all 7s. So there's Inferno. That was reprinted a lot with several different types of artwork. I might have a look at that again. Call forth the Tempest, Lava Trap. Oh yeah, Blasphemous Axe. And then it had that cost less, 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. Yeah, I remember when that came out. And they put that in Commander a few times as well. So just going back to Inferno before we wrap things up. I just want to look at all the printings and where it did cut off. So here we go in the dark. What's this? So yeah, there is a version of the artwork in 4th edition. Okay. So if you don't want to spend, which was that? It's $5.65, but you quite like that artwork, and you don't mind white borders, then yeah, it's good. What about the next artwork? So this is 5th, this is 6th, still white bordered. That's 7th. We do have a 7th edition. Like promo foil edition foil, and that was online promos only. So there's actually not that many black border versions of Inferno kicking around in actual fact, apart from the special ones. Wow, look at that. So would, I suppose, yeah, so out of everything, is it the case that the cheapest black bordered version in paper would be the dark. Yeah. So unless you can manage to find foreign black border. Oh well, I'm finished on a good note there, a bit of inferno. Right, so hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I did just going through that. So next week's going to be interesting. I'll have to check through, see what tournaments are around, what the formats were. But if nothing else, it could be back to a theme deck possibly. Unless I can find... Maybe I'll see if I can track down a Cranial Affinity from this period. But I really want to try and include decks which actually feature at least one card from, whatever sets come in. That's the whole point. So that's why I tend to have to go for theme decks at this point, because there's not always a lot of tournament decks that might feature newer cards, and that doesn't really happen until often we get to here, and we've got, this is when we see the first of the block format events where they've got champions and betrayers in it, hopefully. And then this point, and it wasn't until here and we get to this banning, which is interesting because of the timing on it between March and June. So nothing here you can see. So we've got betrayers that comes in, it's still in, but in this period they've banned all of this stuff, so to try and just make things not quite so miserable in terms of just the amount of affinity stuff, so they get all banned, which means of course the deck that we did today is completely like blown out the water in that format, in that form. And then here we actually get the proper saviors coming in. So this version of standard, if you like, is the version with all of this stuff banned, and then we get that band is obviously there, and then we get the period when we've got the nationals, and then we're into 9th edition coming in. So some interesting stuff to look forward to, like to see sort of things pre and post all these bannings. So we've still got some, so right from here. So I'm looking forward to this. Actually should be an interesting period. Got Kamigawa. Cool. Lots of stuff to talk about. Okay, so thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.